Hi. So I promised Momo and Sheva that I would explain the details of our special minig of how to light candles because it's different than everybody else. Everybody else follows the normal rule, which is that kol habrachot mevarchin over la'asiyatan. In other words, before you do a mitzvah, you make the bracha and you finish all the brachot before you do the mitzvah. And that's how they light Hanukkah candles. You know, they say Lahadlik Ner Chanukah or Shel Chanukah or Shalich Chanukah. There's all kinds of different versions. And then Nasa Nisim in the first night Shachianu, and then they light. And once they light them all straight through. My minig is something I adopted from the Rav because I found it not just convincing, but I found it very, very meaningful. And that's why we do. What do? We say, the first night we say all three brachot before we light the candle, fartik like everybody else. From the second night on, however, we say Lahadlik Ner Shel Chanukah, light the first candle, and then, and only then, say Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu, and then light the rest of the candles. Now, why is that? The reason is found in the dual character of the bracha of Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu. The bracha of Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu has two jobs. First, it's a birkat mitzvah. It's a bracha you make before you perform a mitzvah, like any other bracha, any other asher kidshanu mitzvah b'tzivanu. That's one thing. So, if that's the case, it really should be said before you do the mitzvah. However, as opposed to other brachot, it has another job. The Gemara says in Shabbat, and this is mentioned in Masechet Sofrim as well, that if a person's walking the street, and they're probably not going to, like Hanukkah Lech, maybe they don't have a home, maybe whatever the case might be. When you see, all you have to do, if you see Hanukkah lights, then you say Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu Bayamim Ahem Bazman Hazeh. Because the mitzvah, the bracha is not just a mitzvah birkat hamitzvah; it's a reactive mitzvah bracha. It's a bracha of shevach v'hoda'ah. You see the lights, you see the nerot, you think about all that the nerot stand for, and all that they signify, and all that they celebrate, and you have a response of shevach v'hoda'ah, of praise and thanks to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that you that she'asa nisim lavotenu bayamim ahem bazman hazeh. Now, the Rav said, if we say all of the brachot before we light anything, so that element, for our own purposes, for our own observance, that element of the act of interacting with the candles is gone, because there's no candle yet. We say all the brachot before we light anything. So here he suggested. He invoked a formulation in a book called Masechet Sofrim. Masechet Sofrim is a collection of halachot for Beit Knesset and for ritual worship, which it was put together in Eretz Yisrael after the time of the Gemara, but reflects the traditions of the Talmud and the earlier stuff. And Masechet Sofrim says that the proper way to light the candles, and I'm going to assume that that's how they did it in ancient Eretz Yisrael, is first you say Sha'asani lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, and then it says, and you wait, and then you recite Hanerot halalu, and after you recite Hanerot halalu, then you say Shachianu and on the first night, and Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu, and every other night you just say you say Lahadlik Ner Chanukah, you say Hanerot Halalu, and then you say Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu. What do you gain by doing it that way? It's a little bit clumsy. So the Rav explained that what happens is that when you first say Lahadlik Ner Chanukah, that's the Birkat Mitzvah. Then what you do is you light the first candle, you light a candle, and then you say Halerot Halalu, basically laying out, explaining the significance of the candle that you just lit, and then you respond to it. So, all right. Now, what about so that preserves the sort of interactive joy and response and happiness that you have at the miracle that the candle symbolizes. What happened to over l'asiyatan? What happened to doing things before the mitzvah? You've lost that, seemingly. The answer is no. Because if you are doing a mitzvah and you make the bracha before the mitzvah is finished, that's still called over l'asiyatan. That's still called doing something in the before the mitzvah is completed. That's still called over before it's done. So, for example, when we wash the netilat yadayim, so our minig is not to say al netilat yadayim before we put water on our hands, because our hands are tameh. So what do? We pour water on our hands, and then we say the bracha, and then we dry our hands, because drying our hands is part of the netilah. So since you're doing the bracha in the midst of the mitzvah before it's completed, that's also called over l'asiyatan. So the Rav said so he suggested this is a way to be able to have all aspects of the mitzvah, in fact, to maximize the experience of the mitzvah. So and this is what we do. The first night, there's no way around it. We say all three brachot before we light the candle. Fartik. The second night already, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have your sufganiyot and eat them too. So what do? Number one, we say lahadlik ner Hanukkah, and we light one candle, which, by the way, fulfills the minimum anyways. And then I used to, many years ago, when you guys were little, I used to actually recite Haneros Halalu. It got to be too clumsy, but we say Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu. After we've already interacted with the candle, we're responding to the existence of the candle. We know what it stands for. So we're saying Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu. And only then do you light the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh candle, completing the mitzvah. So all the brachot have been said before you complete the mitzvah. On the other hand, we still have this one moment of turning, of having the Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu be a bracha, not only of a birkat mitzvah, which is said before you recite it, perform a mitzvah, but also a reactive mitzvah, a bracha of shevach v'hodah l'kadosh baruch hu upon seeing the candles. Now, if you want to stick Hanerot Halalu in there in the middle, that's fine. That'd be perfect. That's exactly what Maran Rudrick said. But as I said, I've sort of modified it because it's less clumsy. Because especially since when we have a lot of people in the house and we all and everybody's benching licht, so we save Hanerot Halalu for later. By the way, if you really want to go into this, so Danny Sperber in his book Minhagei Yisrael Volume 1 has a discussion of why Hanerot Halalu was sort of inserted into the service by Rabbi Meir Rothenberg in Ashkenaz in the 13th century, when in fact it wasn't originally recited by Sfardim, but that's not for now. So in other words, again, so our minig is first night all three brachot before lighting the first candle. You say the brachot, light the candle, Hanerot Halalu, finished. From the second night on, lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, light the first candle. Then we say Sha'asa Nisim Lavotenu b'yamim hahem b'zman hazeh, because we react to the fact that there's a candle in front of us, which symbolizes the Pach HaShemen and the Nes Nistar and the victory over the Greeks and over the Mityavnim. And then you can complete the series 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is why I do it, and this is FYI.